Hello and welcome to Doing Good, a podcast where I speak about work, the future, and the role of business in changing the world for the better. Today I'm speaking with Magatte Wade. She's an entrepreneur, a keynote speaker, African prosperity activist, and the author of The Heart of A Cheetah, the book that we'll be discussing today. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation. So, Magatte, you are a serial entrepreneur. I always struggle with this word, but also a speaker that really focuses on prosperity of Africa. You just published a great book called Heart of a Cheetah. What is a cheetah?
Very good question, Dobrosława. Thank you. And by the way, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity. The cheetah. So the reason why I called this book The Heart of a Cheetah, it's in reference and it's in honor for George Ayittey. George Ayittey was a Ghanaian economist. We lost him earlier last year. And so the story there is that back in 2007, during the first TED Global, because I'm sure you in Poland, people know of TED conferences. So it was the first time that the TED conferences had a conference in Africa, and it was in Arusha in 2007. And I, along with 99 other young Africans, I was part of the TED Fellows. We were the first TED Fellows cohort. And so it was basically, they went, around the world, and they, both in Africa and outside of Africa, looking for, 100 of the young Africans that they thought would definitely play a role in, in Africa's future. And I guess, whatever, I got picked for that. And so it was my opportunity to go to TED for the first time. And there, during that conference, pretty much everybody back then in the world who had a big name was pretty much there. You had the Google boys, Sergey Brin, Larry Page, you had Bill Gates, pretty much everyone was there. And so, there, it was the first time for me. I had just started my first company, Adina, and at that time, I look around, and I think it was the first time that I was seeing some Africans who were kind of expressing some of the feelings and thoughts that I was having back then. Because up till now, at that point, up till then, I have been more on the left of the left. If you had to position me somewhere, I was still very much in the camp of, aid is good, but trade is better. I had not turned my back on foreign aid yet. So I was very much into that, and I just barely had gotten to that level. Before that, it was just like, corporations are bad, business is bad, they're all terrible. So I was just, and there I was in Arusha, and I was hearing these Africans who were expressing the same thing on stage. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about people like George Ayittey, the Ghanaian economist. I'm talking about Andrew Mwenda. People like that who really have a good grip on economics. And George's talk was titled Hippos versus Cheetahs. And what he was saying was that basically the hippos were these people, when it comes to Africa, and it's not just the leaders, but the hippos is more like a mindset mentality. It's people who had somehow, when it comes to Africa, go about it the good old way of foreign aid, and NGOs and multilateral organizations. We're talking about the World Bank, the IMF. Basically, for them, that's how the issues of Africa will be solved. Right. So it's almost like coming from a mindset of victimhood mentality, almost as if these Africans, these poor, pathetic people, without intervention, they just can't do much more for themselves. And of course, that way of thinking benefits a whole complete array of characters. And I guess the documentary Poverty Inc. Lays it out very well. Poverty is an industry. And from the leaders of my nation, from the leaders of the poor nations, to the leaders of the leaders of the donor countries, to all the organizations that are involved in distributing and the aid funds, foreign aid and NGO funds, it's everybody eats except for the people it's designed for, meaning the everyday ordinary Africans on the ground, right? And so of course, they keep perpetuating that mentality, that mindset, the hippo mindset. Face them off with those of us who say, we're not going to wait for anyone to solve this. We believe that the future of Africa lies in the hands of Africans themselves, doing, changing the Africans doing things for Africans by Africans. So that's a very different mindset. It's a mindset of we're not going to wait for anyone. We're certainly not going to wait for the government. We're certainly not going to wait for IMF, World Bank, and all of you cronies. Well, I shouldn't call them cronies because it's a mixed bag there. But we're not going to wait for all of you people to get our continent ahead. There's something else that needs to be done here. And especially, we really believe in the free markets, because the free markets is what allows entrepreneurs to do their work. Because most people don't think about it. Poverty is solved by prosperity, not poverty alleviation. But everyone you talk to is involved in poverty alleviation. I mean, you see it everywhere. Where do you see, even at the World Bank or the IMF or, the Sustainable Development Goals, when do you even hear these people use the word prosperity? It's always poverty alleviation. It's just that. So poverty is solved by prosperity. Who builds prosperity? Entrepreneurs. That's why we care about them. What do entrepreneurs need? An enabling business environment. The free markets. So George was just laying it all out there, and he said, the future of Africa lies on the back of the cheetahs. And he looked at all of us in the room, all of us 100 Africans, this cohort of TED fellows. And he told me later, he said, you guys are my cheetahs. And he said, the one word I have for you is run, cheetahs, run. And so the injunction we got from him is run, cheetahs, run. And like the cheetahs do, we're going to run in leaps and bounds, because as I like to say, the time for catching up for Africa is no more. Now it's time for leapfrogging, because this has gone on for too long. We now must leapfrog. And it's a good thing that the cheetah runs in leaps and bounds. So even there, the metaphor remains. So that's pretty much what the cheetah metaphor is all about. It's those of us who believe in a bright future for Africa, but it's also those of us who believe that it's going to be achieved through the free markets and allowing entrepreneurs to do the work that only entrepreneurs can do, which is wealth creation, which is, wealth of nations comes from. So that's why cheetah.
I think it's interesting because when you say that part of the problem is that there are no mentions of prosperity, it's hard to achieve prosperity if it wasn't even a goal in the first place. In the sense that we often fail at achieving our goals. That's why we like to make them ambitious. So that they inspire us, even if we are not able to completely achieve them. So once you realize that prosperity is not even something that is thought of as this inspiring goal, then there is absolutely no way it's going to ever be achieved.
That's right. The stories, that's why to me, the reason why I wrote the book beyond making the point is because I believe that the stories you tell yourself, ideas matter. Ideas are so powerful. So the stories we tell ourselves matter, because what you believe in will then dictate which actions you're going to take. So it's very important. And when it comes to the Africa story, we have it wrong. We've been distracted for decades since the end of colonization. And it's about time that we reconsider the narrative that we have come to a consensus on when it comes to Africa, and why to this day it remains the poorest region in the world. That narrative needs to be rethought, because the minute it gets rethought, I do believe we're going to see something different, even from the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. I believe those 17 goals will probably change. It's probably going to go to one goal, which is we vanquish poverty. Because when you look at the 17 goals of the UN of the SDGs, a good 15 of them are a direct consequence of poverty. Yet they put them as goals as if it should be a goal. No, you go to the root cause, that poverty is, and then you see all of these other ones go poof, 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 poof in the air. But right now, I am supposed to spend all my energy, a good 80% of my energy is spent on addressing symptoms. Symptoms. How do we ever get there? If most of the energy and time is focused on symptoms and 20% is focused on the root cause. It's never going to happen. But this is going on because of a story we told ourselves to start with. The story is profoundly wrong. And so that's what the book is trying to correct. In a way, the story is just diagnosis. So that's where I'm coming from with all of this.
So there's one more thing that you often mention, which I believe is quite controversial, which is that we should stop speaking about colonialism and blaming colonialism for the poverty that's happening today. So can you say a bit more about that? Because that's the main narrative I can see here in Europe.
Absolutely. And it's a narrative we have in America as well. And it's a narrative we have in Africa as well. So, and it is very controversial because by now that story has almost formed the identity of so many people. In this case, the identity of the Africans themselves. There's so many Africans who seem to have part of their identity is to be a victim of colonization. Was colonization horrible? Yes. And before that, slavery, horrible? Yes. Is there anything that I, Magatte Wade, living in 2024, can do about it? No. Right? It's still research. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. Right? But my great friend, Bishop Omar would say, no matter what happened to you, you're responsible for what you do for you. So no matter what happened to us, I'm responsible for what I do for myself today. So my point is, colonialism happened. Has it played a role in where we are today? Yes. But is it the reason why we remain desperately the poorest nation in the world today? I argue not. Because let's go back. Poverty is solved by prosperity. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs who need a viable, sane, friendly business environment. Then I look there and I realize that since their independences, most African nations have never given themselves a chance to have a proper business environment. So I'm sorry, but if what we're talking about is poverty, because I think that's a question you asked me, is Africa, it's controversial, but I'm saying Africa is not poor today because of colonialism. Yes, because I go back to that equation. Poverty is solved by prosperity. Prosperity is solved by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need good business environment. And then when you look there, you realize that African nations are the ones with the worst business environments in the world. I mean, so why in the world would you then keep talking about colonialism when we're talking about this is what causes prosperity? This is what builds prosperity. And guess what, guys? You've never given yourself the tools to build prosperity. So I believe that until we have done that, we should probably go back to the drawing board, try that, see if it works or not, and then we can open our mouths again. But until we do that, I absolutely have no patience for somebody who is out there just criticizing colonialism, because last time I checked, you even had Ethiopia has never been colonized. One of the very many few never been colonized. Ethiopia has been dirt poor. I think when you were looking, at the economies of all of those places, for the longest time, Ethiopia was a poor nation. It just recently was starting to do well. Once, by the way, they started looking at the business environment. Once they tried to make it easy for businesses to be, that's when Ethiopia was rising up recently. Until they went back.
I remember that when I was a kid, Ethiopia was basically an example, or this country that everybody thought of when they were thinking of poverty, because of the pictures of children dying of hunger.
Exactly. So Ethiopia never been colonized. And like you said, that's very true. It was the first country people would think of when they would think of poverty. There is even a joke out there. There is a joke that people have, and they say, what is an Ethiopian that has a little bit of meat on their bodies? Oh, it's an Ethiopian showing off. I mean, it's a terrible joke, it's because it says, an Ethiopian that has, meat on their bones, like meaning maybe fat or whatever. What is it? Oh, it's an Ethiopian showing off. That was a running joke among many Africans for the longest time. It's a terrible joke. You can argue, but it just goes to say exactly what we're saying here. It was the epitome. This country epitomized, poverty in so many people's minds. So my point is, you see how all of a sudden when you start to add to put things together, it doesn't add up. So yeah, can you say that something made you delayed you? Yes, but it's not because you started the race later, but you can't eventually catch up. You see, I'm a track athlete. I was an athlete for the longest time, and my thing was track, right? Always speed, of course. Me, speed, and then jumping, and then like the obstacle race, all of that stuff. And sometimes we do the relays. So relays, what happens is they try to put the strongest person in the front and in the back, especially so that you can catch up if you need to, or give a good start to your team if you need to. So oftentimes, sometimes the race gets started on the wrong foot sometimes. And sometimes you can make up for it. Sometimes you cannot make up for it. But I argue that in this situation, and as with anything in life, you can always, no matter your beginnings, however humble they might be, however screwed up they might be, there is always a path forward. Always. And as long as you keep looking behind you, you're never going to make it. As a racer, that's the first thing I learned. Do not look back. Do not look sideways, because if you do, you're going to fall and trip. And yes, everybody's going to keep passing you. But if you focus, if you keep your eyes on the ball, on the other side, you have all the chances of making it. And we're not doing that right now. Right now, everybody's like looking back. And then we wonder why we never get over there. So that's what I mean by that. It's, we know that poverty is not solved by supposedly lack of not having been colonized. There are some nations that have never been colonized and sincerely have nothing to show for themselves to this day. Conversely, you have nations that have been colonized and today look at them thriving. The one I use, because when you use Singapore, then they all cried like, how can you compare Singapore to a continent like Africa or even like these big countries in Africa? I'm like, because you don't know how to learn a lesson. When we look at lessons in the world, you're going back to the essence of what might be working. So then most recently, I'm also using the Vietnam case. I mean, Vietnam was not only colonized, but before the French left, they bombed the place. I mean, everything was ripped off. And then that place has been bombed and bombed again. I mean, senseless. And look at Vietnam today. Kicking all of our asses back home in Africa. So please give me a break. At some point, come on, guys. That's what I mean.
And also Rwanda is a great example in Africa.
Another one.
Yeah, it's
another one.
Yeah, it really is. Like I've read a couple of books about it. I think it's extremely inspiring also in this area of having a country that was able to go through the process of reconciliation after horrible crimes.
Yep.
And now being not only one of the most prosperous countries in Africa, but also having lots of women in the government, and actually kind of being very inspiring in lots of metrics that we associate more with the first world, let's say.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember one day I was giving a talk at the OECD in Paris, for the OECD in Paris, and they were so upset because I told them the streets of Kigali are cleaner than the streets of Paris. And then, of course, they were like, oh, my God. But that's true. Have you gone to Kigali? Kigali is amazing. It's an amazing city. Okay. And people feel super safe, taking a run, having a run at 5 a.m. in the morning, or me sometimes coming back from somewhere at 2 a.m. in the morning. I never freak out, maybe even the way I do freak out if I'm in Brooklyn, New York. So, we got to just kind of see what's going on here. But the miracle of Rwanda, you see, I see so many Africans, for the Africans that are in support of Rwanda, because some people in Africa are, whenever you use the word Rwanda, it's like, yeah, did you know what they're doing here and here? I speak of what I know. What I know, again, is what builds prosperity. And Rwanda is giving itself the tools right now to build prosperity because they have been very serious about this concept of a business environment that entrepreneurs need in order to thrive, and that foreign investors need in order to say, hey, this is good, we're going to go. So they have been very serious. Here goes a country that understood it, went to work to get to be one of the top doing business index ranking, reformers, in Africa. And the magic is happening. We're seeing it. So it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. And then beyond that, you also have Botswana. Botswana has done amazingly well from the very beginning, because their leader post colonialism, Sir Tikama, was a Oxford lawyer trained person who came back. He was a chief of his kingship, but he didn't want to be back. When he came back, he didn't want to be king again. But his people said, no, we want you to lead us. So for me, I don't care if you had democracy, whatever you have, as long as it's something that the people decided, that's fine. When you come back and you're like this person and your people are saying, we want you to be our king. If that's voluntary association, who are we to say, oh, bad you, because not democracy, right? Same thing with, I see stuff in all over the place in Rwanda saying, fourth term, fifth term. Well, Paul Kagame modeled himself after Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. Now, if his people are in line with that, who are you, me, or anybody else to say, you guys, this is not right? To be a modern society should be a society where we have an understanding that no more than 2 mandates. Well, Lee Kuan Yew, when he died, his people kept, asking him to stay on. And when he left, nobody had a problem with his son, I think, is the one taking over. And why is that? It's because probably he was doing, taking reforms. He was basically performing in a way that the people were happy with. If they were not, trust me, people have very interesting ways of telling you we're not happy with your work. So my point is, this is what we have seen. The nations that have tried this, Mauritius is another one. The few nations that have been serious about the business environment, have seen exactly what others have seen what Singapore saw when they did it. They saw what Vietnam's seeing when they're doing it, even what China saw when they started doing it. See, that's the other thing. China was totally inspired by Hong Kong. And so for the Africans who are sitting there and saying, and this is not for you, Dobrosława, because I have, as you can see, a little few bones to pick with few people. But when they're sitting there and be like, how can you use Singapore as a model and comparing it to Africa? You cannot be serious. Well, China, 1.45, it keeps going, billion people, comparing itself and taking lessons from a small island called Hong Kong. Yeah, because the solution is going to be special economic zones, city size. These are the SEZs, special economic zones. That's what China did. Shenzhen, all of those different countries. So you do it, like almost mini Hong Kongs all over the place within China. And that is exactly what we recommend for people to try and do within Africa as well. I don't think, for Rwanda is a separate case because Rwanda is a smaller country, but even as a small country, I still would argue do it zone by zone. No need to, because if you try to come and convert the whole country from where it's at to what these type of, world-class business environment means, it might be hard because, first of all, when you come to a nation, however dysfunctional that nation is, which is the case of many African nations, you still have people who have built a life on that chaos, right? So if you come and you want to change everything from one day to another, you're surely going to have people fighting you. You're going to have the oligarchs of your country. You're going to have all the crony businesses, all of those people, and they're powerful. They're powerful because they're also in cahoot with the government. So it's really hard to come in and say from one day to another, all the rules are going to change because you're going to have the people who are benefiting from the current status quo are going to be against you because you're threatening them directly. You're going to have the people themselves who stand to gain the most from the improvement, yet they will fight you tooth and nail. Why? Because us humans, for the most part, don't like change. We don't. Remember the Facebook days? Whenever Facebook comes up with a new change, everybody was threatening to leave. But then after a few months, if you take it away, they're like, oh no, this is staying. You see? But it was a little bit of friction at first. But if you try to force people, it's going to be problematic. And then last but not least, is the fact that it's one thing to change all of these reforms. Reforms mean laws or removing some regulations. In the case of many African nations who are Francophone nations like mine, Senegal, if you're going to be serious about having a world-class business environment, because this is the other thing we need to understand. In 2024, and it started before 2024, we all belong to a global world. And talent and capital, people, countries, nations are fighting for talent and capital. And talent and capital, when it's looking at where it's going to go deploy itself, it looks at the whole world, because the whole world is its oyster. It's not limited to, oh, where can I go in Africa versus where can I go in Asia versus where can I go in Europe versus where can I go in the Americas. It looks around the world and is thinking about the best place for itself, for the capital and the talent they're about to deploy. So Africans need to remember we are competing in a global world. So we can no longer think that these subpar special economic zones that we have sprouting all over the continent is going to get us anywhere. Because these are zones that are running on 80s software, competing with zones around the world that are running on the most cutting edge software. It's not going to cut it. So we're going to have to be a little bit more serious than that. But so what it means to be a world-class business environment running on the most cutting edge software, it's going to mean at the very minimum, you're going to have to embrace common law. Well, guess what? All Francophone African nations are running on civil law, which is the absolute worst type of law for business. I argue that even if the French are serious about wanting to get out of the economic marism that they're in, they're going to have at some point to consider, common law. It's just the way it is. So you see, but so you're going to have to make these very radical changes oftentimes. The common law is going to have to be there. We now also need to think about some of the most, some of the most cutting edge and most best and efficient, rules and regulations and governance systems for these special economic zones. You're also going to have to think about maybe even the idea of building custom regulatory framework. I mean, we're talking about things that is really pointy here. But even if I just stop at the common law, converting from civil law to common law, because that's the baseline on which you build everything else. You can say that as a country. You can say, yeah, we understand we have to do this and we're going to do it because we want to be the best. But once you do it, it doesn't mean that your judicial system is going to follow. Because once you do that, remember, the judges have to be trained. None of your judges understand common law. And if your judges are not well trained or have a reputation of really understanding and doing it right, then the investment is still not going to want to come. Because it's going to say, oh, when there's a dispute, I don't trust that these judges know what they're doing. And investment does not like uncertainty. So you see, you can pass these laws, you can change the law that you're using from civil to common law, but you still have to have everything else follow. The lawyers have to understand this. The judges have to know it. You have to have judges who already have a reputation have a reputation and are credible, and so that they can bootstrap credibility, in all of this. So you see, it's a lot. It's just a lot. But this is what African nations or any nation who doesn't want to be left behind is going to have to do. And again, even this, I like to tease the French, even you French people are going to have to do this as well, because I think they're starting to see the limits. Because right now, France is living on three things. France is living on weapons, the Eiffel Tower, and French luxury brands. And even there, what I would say is a French luxury brand, they have been asleep for a bit, because maybe 10 years ago, I wrote this article called "Meaning is the New Luxury." You see, the needle of status, because luxury is a lot of status, right? And the needle of status has moved in most of the Western world. Japan, America, Australia are leading this, what we call the LOHAS demographic. These are the life of health and sustainability. The other way to think of them is the cultural creative demographic. this is the part in us. It's not just about saying, is Magatte one or is Dobrosława one? It's about you, me. So many of us now we take into account into our purchasing into our purchasing decision. We have an element of ethics that's in there. You're going to think about this company, the product that they're selling. Is it good for me? Is it good for Earth? Is it good for the community where they are? Are they treating the employees right? Are they treating the suppliers right? So you're thinking about all of those things, And so this demographic is one of the fastest growing demographics in the world. And you find them primarily, like I said, in Japan, the US. That's the demographic I specialize in. And because I specialize in them, I could have told you 10 years ago that luxury brands have an expiration date on them, the way we know them. Dior, Chanel, all of that have an expiration date on them. Because ask a lot of my generation here and way younger, even Gen Zs, but Gen Z Americans are not.
Care.
They don't like those brands. I mean, they not only don't care, but they actually actively despise them. They actively despise them. Walking around with some of these brands sends a very bad signal. So the needle of status has shifted, and everybody around here got the memo, and more people are getting the memo. But
and this is where Cheetah may
yes. So many of these people have not gotten the memo. Many people around these waters have gotten the memo, and many more keep getting it. That's why it's the fastest growing demographic. It's a behavioral demographic. So it's not about your age or whatever. It's just a behavior. It's a behavior that people have. But where people have not gotten the memo for the most part is where you have a lot of a nouveau riche, Russia, China, and guess what? Why is Pinot right now he flirts with Elon Musk as to who is the richest man in the world? Depends on which month you look at it. Pinot, the owner of LVMH, that owns most of all of these. Where did the growth come from? China, didn't it? But at some point, the Chinese also are going to get the memo.
For me, it's interesting because for many years I've been animal protection activist, and Poland. Well, it's not a huge country, but we are one of the main producers of fur in the world. So comparatively tiny country, but still the third biggest in terms of mink and fox production.
Right.
And no one in Poland wears fur. It's totally passé. Like no one does it. I think even in most of Europe, no one does it. So most of it is export. Russia and China, as you mentioned.
There you go. But one day they will get the memo that when people look at them wearing those fur coats, that they're basically thinking, oh my God, it says bad things about you. It's just really looked down upon. You will not catch me dead with some animal stuff on me. I mean, seriously, not.
Yeah, and I think it's very similar to what you mentioned about these luxurious products. I think it creates this one picture of someone wearing fur and maybe some type of perfume and some clothes that maybe a couple of years ago meant that you're just like rich and you're doing well, and now just said that you just don't have taste.
Thank you. And once they get the memo, guess what's going to happen? I think unless LVMH understands what we're talking about, which I would like to think they do have some experts in there that can talk to them about the trends. Unless they understand what we're talking about and have already started acquiring brands that are more along the lines of Cheetah Made and, this whole, this is going back to the conscious capitalism, these brands that have embedded in their DNA, good practices, right? So unless they already have started buying brands like that in preparation for when their last frontier customers, catch on with, oh, you have no taste when you're doing this, their stock is going to go way down. Because the population, we have just left those waters. We just have left. So that's where I was coming from. That's pretty much what I was, that's what I'm seeing. And so I saw it a long time ago, and it was so very interesting. I'm seeing it, and right now they are like all excited because, oh yeah, we're still making a lot of money. Good for you. But just know that there's an expiration date on that as well. So, and for me, I'm trying to prepare my African friends to kind of be exactly where things are going to be at. and where things are going to be, it's going to be at Cheetah Made. Cheetah Made. In this case, Cheetah Made means African products made in Africa by Africans. This is the way that people are going to be able to show that, there are people who, who have a better understanding of the world. And, the other day I saw somebody posting, it's funny because you have so many folks who I don't know, sometimes some people I don't know. So he emailed, he's like, not emailed, but on my YouTube. He's like, well, Africa, never going to be as productive as the Chinese. And whatever product they make is always going to be better quality than yours. And so therefore they're always going to be ahead of you. And whatever, Africa's never going to make it. I'm like, ooh, keep talking, buddy. Because what you don't understand, they're right there. You're telling me that you totally don't understand the world of consumer brands and the world of consumer goods and how us people consume. The reason why I can command a premium on my price, and then and even he was saying, you're always going to be much more expensive than the others, is because and I'm like, you don't understand that this concept of handmade, especially for skincare, handmade, small batch, that is real luxury. That's the luxury, not this stuff that goes through the machines, spitting out 1 million, lip tubes, or lip balms a day. And then, just no human touch for the most part. But here people are they're loving our handmade story, hand poured, all natural ingredients. Even the scents that we use are custom made for us. By a small fragrance house down in the south of France, where all the fragrance that they make comes from the botanicals that they grow on their property, and all distilled old time. People are going back to that. I think we have gone too far. The pendulum has gone too far one end, and now this is how you differentiate yourself. So handmade, hand poured, small batches, always as fresh as possible, better for your skin, all of that stuff. That's where the game is at, and we command such premiums, and people are willing to pay for this. Nobody's putting a gun to their head. They're doing this because that's where they see the value. Because people are tired of products that are full of chemicals that get them sick, or women who find out that they have all of this breast cancer because of a lot of these, skincare products that we use, So this is for me where the promise is. And we Africans are uniquely positioned to provide these goods to the rest of the world. And we just have to make sure that we do it 21st century style. We must be the absolute best in packaging, in branding, in storytelling. I mean, we don't want anybody to buy pity. No. We're going to bring you the best the world has to offer. We're going to bring you things that you didn't even know existed. And we're going to do it in a way where you're just like, whoa, you're just like dazzled. So no more of a pity crap story of buy from us. So, we have a life. That's not us. Well, you're going to have fun doing business with us. That's the promise of Cheetah Made. And that's the mindset that I want to open in my fellow Africans. And then, of course, because I never say things that I don't do myself. Otherwise, I think it's a little bit weird. I love to preach, but the only reason why I can preach is because I'm also practicing. So I offer myself as exhibit 1. That's why we have skin is skin, and we're doing everything. So that's the story of Cheetah Made.
So yeah, because since I've been following you, I know of Skin is Skin, but can you mention also any other brands that are available through Cheetah Made? Or just exciting brands from Africa? Although, again, I think it's kind of bad that we always speak of Africa as if it was one country.
Good for you that you spell that out. I like to always say Africa. And the reason why, in my case, I say Africa, because, I don't have to tell people, I don't have to tell people that I know that Africa has 54 countries, 55 or 56, depending on how you count. I don't have to explain myself. And when it comes to the problems of Africa, seriously, it becomes a village. The fact that most African nations are at the bottom of a Doing Business Index ranking, the reason why we're poor is pretty much the same almost all across the continent. And if you go to many African nations, especially sub-Saharan African nations, except for a few of them, you're going to see the same type of markets all over the place, the same type of layouts, because what prosperity could have bought, we all are in the same boat, but we could not buy it. Our roads, for the most part, in many places, not paved. So almost everything that money, prosperity could buy a nation, we share in common that we don't have it. And we also share the reason why we don't have it. So yes, I will keep saying Africa until we get our act together. Yes. And yes, Africa has multiple different cultures, multiple different languages, all of that stuff. I know it better than anybody. And when it comes to this problem I'm talking about of poverty, I will speak of us as a village. Sorry. So going back to that, African brands made in Africa by African, Cheetah Made. So Cheetah Made is launching in May, which is going to be U.S. Mother's Day. That's going to be the kickstart of it. That's when we're going to kickstart it. That's when we're going to launch it. Sorry. And by then you're going to be able to discover all of these different brands that we're working with. So but right now, you have some brands like, we're probably not going to have them with Cheetah Made because they already have done very well for themselves. So our goal is going to be really to introduce brands that the world doesn't know about yet. But you have companies like So Rebels, you have, Au Liberté, you have many little skincare brands. So we're going to be over the next few months, that's what you'll see. We're going to start introducing them, to the rest of the world, to this side of the world, and launching in May. So you'll see much more there. For now, people can just sign up at cheetahmade.com so that they know when it all launches, so that you can follow the journey and start supporting these great brands and products.
So when will you start shipping to Europe?
All right. Well, what's funny about Europe? We will see what we'll do. And sometimes also people get upset when I talk about Europe. Put yourself in my shoes. Brand and branding is my thing, right? I'm at my third company, and what they all have in common, these are African brands. So the demographic that I was telling about is primarily the cultural creative demographic is very much the leaders in the pack is definitely in the US. And when you have a market the size of the US, which is more or less, when you think of it, a unified market for the most part, right? We have all of these states within the union here in the US. Because today I'm speaking to you from Austin, Texas. Next week I won't be here, but this week I'm here. So when I say the union, it's the US. So you have all of these different states in the US, but what's nice is you can ship easily, unless you're dealing with some specific products, which we have.
Honestly, I feel like you don't have to explain it to me, in the sense that, all the plant-based, alternatives to meat revolution also passed of Europe, and when they directly, trying to sell in Asia. So I think I'm kind of used to not, living in this part of the world that is not being treated as an interesting market. We're just like a bunch of small countries, each of them speaking different languages. So why would you care? I understand that. It's fine.
Okay. So, but I have to say it out. But I have to say it out loud. And the reason why I'm saying it out loud is for those in the back. For me, those in the back is always the same. Remember, I told you those in the back who are still stuck in this victimhood mentality and blah blah blah. The world is the way it is. And I'm sorry, but a lot of Africans, especially Francophone Africans, for them the world is France. It's like France. And so when you hear on even the news or whatever back home, it's always like all the examples. It's like France. So France is that's basically the stars. Remember when you said reach for the stars? That's the stars. And I'm like, oh my God, if France is the stars, you are really not looking high. Because in the grand scheme of things, seriously, France is like your ultimate destination. So I have to say this. For me, if you're starting a brand, and I say this to my friends who are even in France, I tell them, leave France, come here, come to the US. Because have you noticed, Dobrosława, tell me a brand that was built in France within the past 10 years that has conquered the world? 10 years, or even I give you 15 years.
A very good question.
Because, and then US, when you start to think of US, you have companies like Facebook. It's a little bit more than 10 years, but that's why I said 15. I mean, you have all of these companies.
Now OpenAI.
OpenAI, ChatGPT, all of that stuff. Even when it comes to consumer brands, the French are lamenting because they're like, oh, we're a nation of gastronomy, blah, blah, blah. How come, and therefore, how come our youth is more excited to eat McDonald's than traditional French food? Similarly, we're the country of Aubade, Chantel, lingerie, because I love lingerie. Chantel, Aubade, like this really top high-end, like lingerie, super fine, well done, Well, guess what? Victoria's Secret is kicking their ass all over the place. It's like mid to mid, sub to mid-level lingerie company. Nothing really special about it, but that's what the young French people want to consume. Aubade has never made it to the US big. Most people here don't know Aubade, except for people like me or like that who came from France. Maybe that's why. Aubade never made it. Chantel never made it. They never made it. Never. So American brands keep kicking their asses. Because America really is still the best when it comes to branding. Whether you like it or not, it is still true, and I don't see it stopping. Because innovation is what the Americans have going for them. And innovation comes from all of these different type of people that you get to attract from around the world. As long as America is going to be this place that most people get to choose when given a choice to emigrate to, and also having this level of freedom for people, it's just there's just something magical around this place. And I say it with all my heart. And don't take me wrong, I can be very facetious sometimes when I talk about France, but I really don't, I don't have issues with the French people, and I don't really have issues. There's a lot of things that I really adore about France. Don't take me wrong. But I think even for the French, it's about time that they also wake up, because they tend to think that they're still the best in the world. Yeah, if you look at within Europe, EU and Germany seem to be better than everybody else, but don't sit on those laurels, because the rest of the world, there's a huge, the gap keeps on widening. And so
I think it's interesting because I've been to Paris with my husband a couple of months ago, and this is actually the discussion we had, that maybe for a generation of our parents, France was still an impactful country in sense of culture.
Yeah.
But it's over. Like, no one cares about France now.
Yeah.
We don't look up to France. We don't learn French.
No.
I don't really know people who learn French anymore.
It's us. It's us. So one day, so I'll tell you who the French are relying on for the French language to remain relevant. So this one day I was talking to Jacques Attali. I'm sure you know Jacques Attali. He's a prominent French. I don't think there's something that Jacques Attali doesn't do. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. Don't take me wrong. But I was talking to him, and he was all so proud to be saying that French. What number was he telling me? He was saying that French would be the second or fifth most spoken language in the world by 2050. Do you know who he was counting on? Us, the Africans. And I'm like, if I've got anything to do with that, buddy, it's not going to happen. Because if we're going to be speaking a foreign language, let us be pragmatic and learn a language that's what we're going to be able to use for something, namely, for now, English. English, even in China, when the Chinese could say, oh, look at our numbers, we could make Mandarin or Cantonese to be the language that the world has to speak. But even then, China, they would train people in English in stadiums, hundreds of thousands of people learning English at the same time, with a stadium where you have the microphone speaking and people repeating afterwards. So if even China had to do this, I'm like, friends, really, who do you think you are? So my point is, the reason why I bring all of this up is I'm really right now talking also to the French people, or at least to the African people in France, for them to really recalibrate their environment. And because I was always told, if you're going to get in a race, always race with the best. Because even if you come last, you will still be better than if you had raced with the worst. So I'm not saying France is necessarily the worst, But if France is your everything, then you totally have not even,
It's not a team anymore.
It's not. So that's what I'm speaking. And also even the French. So I feel like, because I don't want France to go down. I really don't. I'm a firm believer in this. My favorite poet, Ted Turner, said, make everybody rich, make everybody prosperous. I'm a firm believer that we will only have peace when everybody is doing well and feeling that they're doing well and that no one is feeling left behind. So I don't believe in a world that's going to be harmonious if one part is doing well and the other part is not doing well. And I don't care who that part is. We all need to do well. And there's no reason why we shouldn't all do well. So what you're hearing me talk right now might sound very critical, but I also feel that the French really need to be waken up. They might listen to me, they might hear this and say, who does she think she is? Fine, I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to those in the back who are seeing, oh, there's a problem and there's got to be something that we should be doing different. I'm talking to those people within France and also my fellow Africans for them to stop thinking that France is the pinnacle. It is not. So look for the best in the world and they become your competitors, not people who are like losing steam. That's all I'm saying.
So when you speak about it, I actually thought about one, let's call it brand. Yes. That I might associate with France, and it's the Netflix series Lupin.
Oh, well, but
that is actually about an African immigrant in the end.
On top of that, Diouf, so he's from my country on top of that. So
yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So even there, you see what are the stories that start to sell? What are the stories that can travel? But anyway, so.
You were speaking about the startup cities and this Hong Kong model, and I really like what you wrote on your Substack, that startup cities or startups in general, they don't have to be about tech. And this is something that I actually find really interesting and inspiring, in the sense that there is this saying that Silicon Valley was very successful in solving lots of unimportant problems. In the sense that once you have often quite young people trying to, solve the problems that matter to them, it's usually not something that really matters to general public, to most of the world, and where the most of the impact is. So I think it is actually interesting to, and this is where the optimistic part of me believes that the way we can make the world better in the end is by increasing, in a way, let's say, the computing power of the world, in the sense of having more brains trying to come up with more solutions. And I think that once we have, most of Asia, most of Africa also kind of joining this space of innovation and contribution to the common good, this is when we will start solving some of the biggest problems. Because, to tackle with really big issues, you kind of have to have entrepreneurs that suffered through the problems, not the richest kids in the richest country, but people who actually went through problems and want to do something about them. So can you comment something on that?
Yes, and I'm so glad, Dobrosława, that you see this, because when I hear them all talk about innovation, so this happened, there was a university that was being inaugurated in Mexico City. And they wanted me to talk because the whole thing was about innovation and talking about the cutting edge innovation of the 21st century, blah, blah, blah. And I said, and the reason why eventually they had me there is because when I was talking to some of the organizers, I said to them, my argument was exactly what you said. In the end, the ultimate innovator, the ultimate innovation is this human brain of ours, each one of ours. So how serious can you be about innovation when you still have a few billion people living in poverty, whose potential is literally being wasted every single day, walking for hours, going to fetch water and then back. and then spending all of his time trying to get the fire going because they're using biomass. So coal, wood, whatever. And then spending all of his time, preparing the meal. And then, hours to go collect the different things they need for the meal, anywhere from the wood to the water to the ingredients that they need, and then making it. And then it gets consumed within half an hour. They sit around the bowl, half an hour, the food is gone. As soon as they're done, they need to go and think again about how are they going to be able to repeat that for dinner time. And when they're done, they go to bed, wake up in the morning, breakfast, same situation. Every waking hour is spent on how am I going to try to survive the next few hours. How can we talk about innovation and leave on the table that many brains, that many hearts, that many people with various interests on the table because of poverty? Are you seriously kidding me right now? I say, because me, I'm all about optimization always. I think that's a smarter thing to do. I don't believe in working hard. I believe in working smart. So you want to work smart in this situation, you unleash these few billion people and you just let them also join the party of innovation with the rest of us. And then our innovation rate is just gonna skyrocket, be multiplied. So that's why for me the startup cities. So startup cities, going back, what I explained earlier, the best way to think of them is that these are next generation special economic zones that have their own law, have their own governance, and also have custom regulatory framework. When I say own law, on governance, all I'm talking about is on the commercial side. Insofar as poverty is, I'll keep repeating this because you'll be surprised how many people don't connect these simple dots. Insofar as poverty is solved by prosperity, prosperity is built by entrepreneurs need a good business environment. Okay. Insofar as that's the equation, then how do we bring to these countries that are notorious for having the worst business environments, hence their poverty, how do we change that? Because that's the only way we're going to get anywhere. Nations who understood it, like Rwanda and others, are doing that and getting somewhere. But what do we do for the other ones? So that's going to be the same solution. And the way you do it, like I said, the reason why you do it zone by zone and not all country at the same time, if you can, is because of the reasons I explained earlier. People don't like change. You have the oligarchs who don't want you to threaten what they have done, blah, 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 and blah. So here, the best way for people to think about startup cities and what it is all about, think about the country. So in a country that has some of the worst business laws in the world right now, this is most African nations, especially sub-Saharan African nations. The goal is going to be for you to see if you can create an enclave where that is not the case anymore. An enclave where on this plot of land, and usually we pick a land that's rather unoccupied, so you don't have issues of expropriation and all that stuff. They took our land, blah, blah, blah. You don't want any of that stuff. So you go to a place that's rather unoccupied, which is even better because clearly people have voted with their feet. They're not here. They're saying this place is worthless. That's why we're not here. So we go there and we say, okay, we'll show you. And so there, that plot of land, you work with the government. So the government can say, okay, here, we're gonna give ourselves a chance to start over. We're gonna give our chance a chance to start over and see if it works. If it works, then maybe it's gonna be the rest of the people who are gonna want it, who are gonna say yes. But let's just try. So here, all the things we know to be cumbersome that the rest of the country has when it comes to business laws, we're gonna change. So again, I insist on the commercial side of it. We're not touching, because some people might be like, oh my God, see, it's a country within a country. No, it's not a country within a country. We're not touching anything that touches the sovereignty of a nation. You're not touching immigration law. You're not touching family law. You're not touching, defense law. You're not touching any of that stuff. Okay? So all you're doing is, we're talking about business. The business environment needs to be better. So here, what we're going to do, we're going to start with a clean slate. And what's going to happen is here, this area is going to count among the best business environments in the world. So the people that I've chosen to do this with, they've chosen me too, is this company called Prospera, and where they have it right now, the first, I call our startup cities, but many people, if you really want to dig into these ideas, you might also want to research the concept of charter cities, because these are cities with their own charter. So I call mine startup cities for different reasons, but it's the same, it's more or less the same thing. The concept. Now, how it gets executed, as you know, the devil is always in the details. So this is where many of us differ from one another. So here you say, on this plot of land, rather unoccupied, this nation is saying, we're going to give ourselves a chance to do it right and see what happens. And so you establish the best business environment. So in Honduras, if you look at Honduras as a country, their ranking on the Doing Business Index ranking, this is what measures how easy or hard it is to do business anywhere in the world. When you look at that in Honduras, you'll see that Honduras is number 140 or 142. I never remember exactly, but definitely 140 and going down. 140, 142, ranking out of a ranking of 195 nations around the world. That's pretty bad. It means it's really bad. It's really bad. Now, when you look at the zone, the startup city Prospera, which is on the island of Roatan, do you know what's their ranking?
No idea.
Number 9.
Okay.
Number 9. Yes.
Which
and
also shows what's possible.
Yes. And they're seeing the results of it. Investment is coming. I think within the first year or so of really being operational or whatever, first couple of years or so, 116 new companies established. People are coming. Investment is coming. Jobs are being created. It's amazing. But this is exactly what Singapore did and understood. So here you're just doing it at a zone level. This is what Hong Kong understood. What communist China understood. Anybody who is serious about becoming prosperous understands and does. And that's all it is. And so this is the reason why I'm so bullish and so hopeful about Africa. And I totally see our future. Because the thing is I don't have to convince all 54 nations. We don't have to have all 54 nations doing this all at once. All I need is one country saying, let's try. And I know that when we try, it's going to work. And you know what happens to things that work? They get emulated. People are going to copy. So I'm no longer fighting. Now it's, we're pulling them. So that's why I'm so bullish. And guess what? One country will go. Because I've since I started speaking to African nations about these things, and it's not only me, there are other people in the Startup Cities movement who are also doing things. It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. I would even say maybe within the next 5 years that something like this will have seen the life. And once it happens, in my lifetime, I will see Africa having taken the shift towards prosperity. Some nation will be there because when these things started being done in the early days of when they were being done by the earlier nations, it was taking 30, 35 years. And then the next generation would take around 25 years. And then I think by the time we go, having learned all the lessons of everybody else and leapfrogging on top, why not 10, 12, 15 years? But if nothing else, we know that it won't take more than 25 years. It's a generation. It's nothing. It's nothing.
I think Poland is also an interesting example of what's possible because when I was a kid, I remember empty shelves in shops. I remember queuing for hours to buy even most basic products. I remember parents having cards to be able to buy sugar or coffee because those weren't available. And this is what communism looks like. So for me, it's always funny, let's say, when you see, especially people in Western Europe being very excited about communist ideas. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, Poland is among high-income countries.
Yes.
So yeah, this is something that, yes, it did happen during my lifetime, and I'm not even that old.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So that's why I'm saying, that's why when you see me so bullish on Africa, it's why. But it's also a reason why you will hear me shouting from the rooftops that Africa is not poor today because of colonialism. I need to give that electroshock to people so that they can be like, oh, wait, what? Because then maybe they can hear a different story. And once they latch onto that story, everything becomes easier. Everything becomes easier. Because even as I'm talking to these countries, these leaders of these countries, trying to, show them why this would work, it only can help if you also have the people at least also being on board with it. But if they're trying to do this, everybody's against it because they don't understand, or they're still stuck on, oh, colonialism, oh, we have to do protectionism, oh, we can't compete in the global world because they're just going to come in. No. We have to have a better understanding of this. Then you will see why this is so important, why we have to do it. And so the more people ask for it as well, the faster we're going to adopt this. The faster we adopt this, the sooner the change is going to come. So it's all hands on deck. I need all hands on deck. All hands on deck. We've got to.
Here comes an important question. What can we do to help?
What can we do to help? I mean, by having me on today, you totally did your part, because at the end of the day, first order of the day should be awareness building. People take it for granted, because especially once they hear what needs to be done, like we work in the startup cities, all of that stuff. So people are like, almost like, I want to be involved in this. And I'm like, if you can't do anything else, please spread the word. Please spread the word. People don't have to agree with what we're saying. But what I'm saying is they need to hear a different side of a story, and they need to hear something different. And let those different ideas clash in their heads, because ideas are best when they clash with each other in people's brains.
Yeah, and sometimes when you hear about something for the first time, you first think it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But then it kind of starts working.
Yes.
And working. And after some time, you realized, oh, there was actually something in there.
Exactly. So what can you do? So what can you do is, first of all, educate yourself about these ideas. So I would always say, I know it's very self-promoting, but the Heart of A Cheetah, I try to lay it down in there. We're going to have some, the Cheetah Generation website will be launched at very soon, where we're going to have tons of resources for people to really dive deep, and go deep. In addition to that, if anybody is interested in being part of a being part of a Startup Cities, journey, definitely there. We have a fund called the African Development Fund. This is the Exploration Fund. So basically, that's a fund that allows us to go country by country by country, talk to the officials, see what's possible. Just a few days ago, I didn't expect this, but I got a phone call, and there's one more country on my list to go explore, because they're just like, wow, they're like, we think we have everything that you're saying you need. Let's explore. So there's this exploration fund that I am here also challenging philanthropy and nonprofits. If you want to be, it's quite frankly, I understand when somebody is dying of hunger, first order of the day is we feed that person and we speak later. I get that. But nothing will ever change if we also don't work on the systems, on the systemic nature of this. So yes, we feed a man or a woman because they need the food right now, but surely some of us have to work on long term. And so I would like to challenge and to inspire nonprofits, philanthropists, to really start thinking radically different. We have everybody and their mothers is involved in providing people a fish. We need more people coming and working on the side of, can we work on the systems? And that's what the startup cities are all about. So if you're a philanthropist, if you're a nonprofit and you want to have a lasting impact, you want to be the person who is gonna walk the last mile of killing poverty. It's going to happen with these things, not just us feeding a person a fish. However life-saving that is. But if that's all we do, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, we're going to be talking about the same problem again. And I surely would like to think that no one is interested in that. So while some of us are focused on giving a man a fish, we need help on the side of let us clean up the systems. That's what Startup Cities is doing. Actually, it is known that NGOs, nonprofit money can go into for-profit. So here, what would happen is, because we believe in the power of a market, because it's also known around the world, special economic zones, the ones who perform the best are the more private, the better it does. And it makes sense because when you're in the market, you have to make sense. Otherwise you're gone. So these are all for profit, but non-profit money can be invested in for profit. What would happen there is at least US 501c3, because this is going to be based out of here because it makes it easier. Because when you have, that's what I talk about, the regulation. If you're in Africa, almost impossible to have a foundation. People can send money to it. It's a nightmare, whatever. So this is for 501s, for non-profit funds. They can invest in a for-profit. The way that works is if this works, then of course they get their money back multiplied, and then you can take it back, put it back into your nonprofit and do more good with it. What's not to love with that? And if our experiment doesn't work, then the money is gone, but you were going to give it away in the first place. So if you're not, and you still get your tax write-off, at least for American, nonprofits. So my point is, what do you have to lose in here? So can we be a little bit more bold? Can we have a little bit more? Can we really show the faith that we have in Africa? Can we? And that's really what I'm out there now trying to inspire people to think about, because nothing is stopping you. Nothing is stopping you. So that's another way that you can be part of this journey. So, and if you want, have part of your donation, portfolio go to feeding a man or a woman, but also have another part be devoted to these longer term solutions. So that's also how people can help. And of course, we're going to need anyone, business people, anyone who has professional acumen that they want to share with our African entrepreneurs, the cheetahs of the African entrepreneurs. So if there are any skills that you would like to share with young entrepreneurs on the other side, women entrepreneurs, they don't have to be so young, but we're also looking for talent. So it's capital and it's talent. So talent to be part of a startup cities, but also work with other entrepreneurs and kind of be mentors to them, so you can help them get to the next level. And capital in the sense of the African Development Fund, so that we can unlock more African nations to do these type of things. And I promise you guys, if we do this, we truly, for the first time, we can talk about making poverty history. So we can finally move on to what you were talking about earlier. Having released billions of people from undignified poverty and have all of these people join in the fight for innovations that are really going to propulse our world forward. You're going to have people working on cancer. You're going to have people working on, new type of education. You're going to have people, our world is going to be so much better. So that's really what's at, and it's about time. It's really about time. There's not a reason why one person should live in abject poverty one more second. There's absolutely no reason. We know how to do this. So let's get it done. So when you're in the world of philanthropy and you're telling me that you care about Africa, I'm going to put you to the test now. Do you really care about Africa? Or all it is for us to be a feel-good moment for you when you give us a fish and we eat. And thanks to that, we didn't die, and it's a lot to celebrate. But so what? So then we keep the status quo so that you always have to feed me? It's going to become very clear. The name of the game is changing right now. Because now people are not going to be able to say, oh, we couldn't participate or whatever. No, you can participate. There's absolutely nothing to lose. If it works, you get the upside. If it doesn't, to do more good. If it doesn't work, you were going to give it away anyway. So please, I think nothing stops us now. Let us do this, and it's going to be fun. So that's how people can help. Educate yourself. The book, The Heart of A Cheetah. We're going to have more material where people can dive in. Hopefully follow me on social media. My podcast, Magatte. I'm everywhere at Magatte W. And and in the startup cities, reach out because we need capital and talent.
Okay, so thank you. I don't want to take more of your time. Go and promote your book. I think it's great. And just as I said previously, I really love your work. At this moment, because of the types of problems that you're trying to solve, I could easily name you one of the most important thinkers that we have nowadays.
Who is it?
And we definitely need more of you everywhere in the world. So yeah, I'm happy to do my part in trying to share what you're doing. And yeah, I'm just a huge fan, as I said. And I hope people will buy your book, follow you on Substack, on your podcast, on your social media. Yeah, just
Thank you.
and you just try to do what you do best, which is changing the world for the better.
We'll try. We'll try. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you very much. And let me know if you need anything else.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and let me know if you'd want me to invite more English speakers. Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe to the channel. Bye.